So, housekeeping. Number one, please stay muted, at least while we go through this, because there's a lot of people. Be respectful and kind. I feel like we don't really need to say that with our community, because that is always what we are at our base, in my opinion, but still. And then November 11th is our next legal queer and A. I may make it, not quite sure yet on the topic. It may be something in relation to this, based on what happens on November 7th. But so that topic will be up in the air. But again, every other Tuesday at noon, we gather, we do this. The topic sometimes, this is not what we were going to talk about prior to the Supreme Court making its announcement. So we roll with the punches. Most of you know who I am. I'm an LGBTQ estate planning attorney, founded my law firm, Jampola Law Group, also co-founded Pride Plans, where folks can get access to these estate planning documents at a fraction of the cost of working with a private attorney. And also founded the Caravan of Hope, my nonprofit, which is exactly what it sounds like, a caravan that I take cross-country, 5,000 miles, stop in 14 cities, and provide pro bono legal services to LGBTQ folks in rural and underserved areas. All right, so what is marriage? What did we fight for? What are we fighting for? What are we worried about? Right? And what a lot of people don't realize is that there are 1,138 state and federal privileges tied to the institution of marriage. People that have attended these webinars before are used to my pen and how my pen stands for marriage equality. And so the 1,138 state and federal privileges. The federal privileges are the silver and the state are the orange. So depending on where you live, there is nothing any of us will be able to do, all right, if the federal government finds a way around or eviscerates the Respect for Marriage Act. Okay, so that is the federal. Then it'll depend with Obergefell, that is state related. So if Obergefell gets overturned or is in any way eviscerated ultimately, then we lose the state. But a lot of people don't realize, you see these headlines, marriage equality being overturned, that's such a broad headline that ultimately doesn't really touch the nuance of the fact that there are state and federal benefits tied to the institution of marriage. Another analogy that I use is that your marriage is like a steak knife. And so ultimately, the steak knife of marriage, if there are 1,100 and hold on one second. Jen, you can go ahead and do that if you need to. So we can let more people in. And so the 1,138 state and federal privileges are like the serrated edges to a knife. Okay, so if we lose the federal benefits, you go from, 1,138 state and federal privileges to about 400. Then you live in Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Texas, you lose the state. You go from a steak knife rather, to a butter knife overnight. But nobody can take away your knife. And that is important, that ultimately what we are talking about when we talk about marriage equality is the 1,138 state and federal privileges. So while the federal government can't rip this up, your marriage certificate. What they can do is nullify the 1,138 state and federal privileges tied to the institution of marriage. And they are fiscally advantageous, financially significant privileges. So what is entailed in all of that? Ultimately, legitimizing our families under the law, securing access to critical rights and benefits, reducing everyday vulnerabilities around healthcare, immigration, Medicaid, parenting, inheritance tax. And we went from over, decades and decades and decades of being a legal stranger to one another, to one another's legal next of kin. Very, very important. The big five privileges. Oh, hold on. Let me stop share. Jen, are you able to log in and increase the rate. It's telling me that we're limited to 99 people.
That's so weird. Yes, let me see what I
That's
can.
what I was talking about earlier. So I'm seeing this
Good.
buy now thing to increase because we're limited to 99 when I thought we had 5,000.
That's so
So,
weird. Let me see what I can do.
okay. Sorry guys. Let me, all right, let me share my screen again. Gotta find you first. All right, there we are. All right. So, yes, there are 1,138 state and federal privileges, but there are the big five. People always ask me, like, wow, that's a lot. What do they entail? And I say that being Canadian, where there are four privileges tied to marriage. I come from a long line of straight people that never got married because there was no point. In Canada, it's truly a religious institution. Never thought I'd agree with Rand Paul on anything, or he, me for that matter. But there we were on Newsmax making for horrible TV because we were in complete agreement that, and they were in our ear being like, why are you not fighting? And he blurted out, because I agree with her. If my people wanted marriage to remain a religious institution, we should not have tied 1,138 state and federal privileges to the institution of marriage. So, the big five: immigration and or general citizenship rights. Big one: taxes and inheritance. You saw the Edie Windsor case. She owed $364,000 in taxes that would have otherwise been zero. Her case, yes, it gave us marriage equality at the state level, but it was really a tax case. And so the privileges inherent in marriage in Pennsylvania, there are only 8 states, maybe 6 now, but with inheritance tax, Pennsylvania being one of them. We called it the gay tax. So you could be together for 47 years, leave everything to your unmarried partner, and you would then have to pay 15% inheritance tax on that, which would have otherwise been zero if we had marriage back then. So healthcare access, either automatic visitation rights to your spouse. One of the 1,138 state and federal privileges is you get automatic visitation rights to your spouse. And then obviously spousal insurance coverage, being able to cover your spouse under your insurance, Social Security survivor benefits, and parentage and custody presumptions. But at the end of the day, with marriage comes, and I must have said this 9 times now, privileges. 1,138 state and federal privileges. There is zero power inherent in marriage. I got passionate around this topic 20 years ago with the Terry Schiavo case. Straight married cis couple. If you remember that case, this is a 20-year anniversary. There was a documentary about it that just came out this year to honor the 20-year anniversary of her death. But she was 29 years old, had a heart attack, ended up in a persistent vegetative state. He was not her healthcare power of attorney. She did not have a living will advance directive. And ultimately, he had no more power over his wife's body than the mother did. Yes, he was her husband, but he had no more power over his wife's body. Okay, so she ended up, and he testified that her pillow talk at night was, I will haunt you until the day you die if I languish on life support. Unfortunately, pillow talk is not binding, and she languished on life support for 15 years. He went bankrupt after 8 years, 1990 to 2005. I entered law school in 2004. That's when I had this big aha moment of these 1,138 state and federal privileges hit all of the massive big aspects of our daily lives. Everything from Medicaid to bankruptcy to immigration to taxes to Social Security to being able to be a parent. It hits on everything and yet gives zero power. Not straight people, not gay people. Nobody has any power by virtue of marriage. And then that's when I became very passionate around advocating for LGBTQ folks. About 10 years ago, when we got marriage equality, I feel like there was a sociological phenomenon where LGBTQ folks were legitimized for the first time in the eyes of the law. and we mistook that feeling for power. We breathed in legitimacy for the first time, and we mistook that feeling for power. And then there was a turning away from these documents. Oh, we're good. We're married. We're good. We're married. We don't need these. And now that that legitimacy is being stripped away violently, we're left realizing, oh shit, we have no power. And there's a return to these documents when we never should have moved away from them. All right, so the 9 estate planning documents that I recommend. So first and foremost, and I'll bring up that slide again, the healthcare power of attorney. So how I do that one differently for LGBTQ folks is most estate planning attorneys will make your HIPAA waiver a separate document. I used to as well, and most people do, but one of our biggest challenges at a hospital is actually establishing our HIPAA status to one another. Man in a hospital bed, woman come running and crying, ma'am, let me take you to your husband. No questions asked. Man in a hospital bed, man come running and crying. Skirt. What's your relationship to the patient? That's my husband. Prove it. Well, I don't have to prove it. I'm the healthcare power of attorney. I don't doubt that that is a valid healthcare power of attorney, but I am going to need a HIPAA waiver. You never waive your HIPAA rights until you do, even by virtue of marriage. That's the law. That's federal law. You never waive your HIPAA rights until you choose to. So all of a sudden, HIPAA privacy becomes a thing. I have a client, she's a nurse, and she was telling me this story the other day. Her parents are divorced, father's with unmarried female partner for the last 14 years. In the last 14 years, each of them has had a significant car accident. In both of those car accidents, they are unmarried, no documents, no healthcare power of attorney, no HIPAA waiver, no nothing, no questions. Right? So there's just this idea that ultimately straight people get a pass because there's this assumed, ma'am, let me take you to your husband. I too used to make it a separate document. My first 3 years in practice, I had 7 couples. Clearly, I'm a slow learner. I had 7 couples grab the healthcare power of Angela stresses power. I'm going to grab the healthcare power of attorney, rush to the hospital, leaving the one little page HIPAA waiver at home. Nobody would talk to them. It's not that I didn't give it to them. It's that they just left it at home. So it wasn't until the 7th time, it was one of my best friends, and I had to hop on my Vespa and head over to Jefferson with the HIPAA waiver that then I realized, oh, I could just combine them. And in 14 years, no one has ever had an issue since. Okay, healthcare power of attorney with HIPAA. Second one is your advance directive. Your living will, also called in some states. I like advanced directive because I'm a literal human, and it's literally what you are doing. When you sign it, in advance of being in said coma, you are directing your healthcare power of attorney about your end of life wishes. I truly believe if Terry Schiavo had at least that document, they would have allowed the husband to live out those wishes. But without either, without him being the healthcare power of attorney or her having an advance directive, they didn't allow for anything. Okay, so advance directive, your end of life wishes. And then the third document I alluded to earlier, and that is the hospital visitation authorization form. All right, HVA1. I do 2 versions of this. This is the HVA1. This is meant for one another, your partner and or spouse. Now, again, pre-marriage equality, I never stopped doing this even when we got marriage equality. Right? I feel like what made me very well positioned for this moment in time is 10 years ago when we got marriage equality, a lot of estate planning attorneys started treating LGBTQ married folks as married folks. And I've had estate planning attorneys ask me, what's the difference between being married, gay married, and straight married? Is it married married? Why do your clients need 9 documents and my clients get 5? Is it married married? No. We're only, even if everything were puppies and babies and roses in this country, Hillary Clinton had won in 2016. We currently live in an alternate universe, one that I choose to spend most of my days. Even if that were true, okay, you're still only considered married in 37 countries out of 195 that fly a flag. So 10 years ago, when my clients could get married, I never stopped treating them as unmarried. I view every LGBTQ married person in this country as predominantly unmarried because statistically, on the whole, you are. Okay. Jen, it still says right meaning capacity. Yes. Okay. All right. We'll just have to apologize to everyone later. You snooze, you lose. You guys are the lucky 99. And if you can fix it or if you need me to fix it, let me know.
I just need a CVC code to be able to finalize and put it in, but I'm not positive that it'll happen for this meeting and
This
upgrade.
thing. It told me it would. 0662. And nobody go to Bora Bora with all my money. And if you do, just take me with you. That's all I ask. So the HVA one. The HVA one, again, even pre-marriage equality, I was doing this for my clients. Post-marriage equality, my clients put this in their passports, right? So right now with Obergefell in effect, you have access to one another in the hospital in all 50 states. But instead of my clients putting this on their person wallet, then they put it in their passports for international travel. Post Obergefell being overturned or eviscerated or however that's going to, go down, then it starts, let's start planning the trip. Then from there, it depends on where you live. All right. Or even, a few weeks ago, I had a conference in Miami in the great state of Florida. And then from there, I had a layover in Hotlanta in the great state of Georgia, right? So even just travel, you could live in the bluest of blue states, but if you, leave your bubble, then this becomes more top of mind. Now, this is the one document where I remove the mention of spouse. Okay, so I don't want to out you by virtue of this card. If you're whipping these out, it's because you're getting some pushback in some way. They didn't just let you in. Okay, so they're giving you pushback in some way. So I don't want to out you by virtue of this card. It's just a contract. I, Angela, allow Carmen, and that's that. And then there's a HIPAA waiver. Again, HIPAA, we love her. We put her everywhere. So you're in the room. They have to talk to you, but you have no power. So it's great to get this done, but actually uploading them to the cloud so that you have access if and when you need them is key. Most estate planning attorneys only care about and plan for death and disability. Shocker. Spoiler alert. You're going to die. It's going to happen once, and hopefully your big long life, right? And we'll plan for it outside of probate and all of the things. But my documents are more around how to live more seamlessly as a marginalized community in this country. So actually having access to them if and when you need them is key. Okay, so then I do an HVA2. The HVA2 is for your chosen family. 3 groups of people actually go on the HVA2. Chosen family, one another's in-laws. I'm doing that just since the election. I didn't do that previously, but again, your in-laws are your in-laws by virtue of your legal relationship to one another. So to the extent that we like our in-laws, I now treat them as chosen family to be safe. And then the third group doesn't apply to everyone, but if it does, it's super powerful. And that is what I call a do not fly list. Are there people that are related to you that you would not want to be able to visit you? Okay, so 3 groups of people: allowed, not allowed, now including one another's in-laws. Okay, and then the 3 legal financial documents: the durable power of attorney. The durable power of attorney is effective immediately upon notarization, never expires, expires at death. There is nothing more powerful of a document while you're alive than the durable power of attorney. You are appointing someone to act for you, as if you were personally present, but in their sole discretion. Super, super helpful, especially for marginalized communities. Post-election, for ICE workshops, I would do estate planning work, not really estate planning, one document for restaurants and for all their undocumented workers. What's the one document we gave them? The durable power of attorney. Okay, there is nothing more powerful than having a proxy, a mini-me out there being able to act for you as you. Never expires, expires at death. And then the will and the trust kick in. The last will and testament and your revocable living trust. The revocable living trust is the water here are your assets, and this is probate avoidance. All right, this is your probate avoidance tool. Now, probate in and of itself is an abstract concept. The way that I like to describe probate and why it sucks and why we want to avoid it with this probate avoidance tool, all right, is imagine life is like being in the grocery store. You're in the grocery store. This is your grocery cart. You get to put whatever you want in it. Lucky Charms, 401k, house, business, whatever. The only way that you get from the grocery store to your car is through the checkout line. You go through the checkout line, you're fourth in line. You're like, okay, I'll be patient. It's fine. And there's a 91-year-old woman ahead of you, and she hasn't even started cutting her coupons. You're like, oh my God, never getting out of here. I'm going to kill her. Then she gets to the front of the line with her 19 coupons. She hands the first one over. First one's expired. And she's not having it. I want a manager. You're going to take this coupon. I want an override. This probate is the checkout line of life. When you check out, when you die, you then go through the checkout line of life. It is slow, glacial, expensive, government oversight, the manager, the override on aisle 5. To the extent that we can avoid a lengthy, costly, and ultimately court proceeding, we want to. Okay, so envision the revocable living trust as your Instacart. All right, so you get to put whatever you want in your grocery cart of life, but instead of going through the checkout line, you Instacart it directly to your intended beneficiaries. Now, this became our probate. This became the probate avoidance tool is the estate planning reason why we do it. But about 50 years ago, this became our marriage recreation tool, our marriage protection tool. Okay, so LGBTQ folks, a creative lawyer 50 years ago saw how this operated in everyday life and went, we don't have a way of binding ourselves together in the bonds of matrimony, but if we become co-trustees, co-CEOs of one another's lives 24/7, that creates an impenetrable, inseverable bond. It's revocable. We can, but the government can't. So if you view your marriage as a castle or your relationship as a castle, this is a moat around your castle. Okay, and then it allowed us to claw back one of the most fiscally advantageous privileges tied to marriage, probate avoidance. The government knows probate sucks. They created it to make money. So they said, if you're legally married, you get one freebie because presumably you went through the grocery store of life together, right? One person pushed the cart while the other person put the Lucky Charms in the cart. But why should one person have to wait on the other side of the checkout line to get their assets from the person that they accumulated these assets with? So you get one freebie. So as LGBTQ folks, this allowed us at a time when we had probate, because we couldn't get married, we didn't get that freebie. This allowed us to claw back one of the most fiscally advantageous privileges tied to marriage, probate avoidance. Okay, so those are the 3 legal, financial, the durable power of attorney, the most powerful, and then the will and the trust. The will. So counterintuitive, but we want the will to do nothing. If anything flows through the will, you've gone through probate. We've screwed up. So everyone has to have a will. This is 400 years ago. Not everybody has a revocable trust. So you'll have what's called a pour over will that pours everything into, that's why I like the visual of water, that pours everything into your revocable living trust. Okay? And so, unless you have kids, people with minor children, this is the only document that can appoint the guardian. Trusts can't speak to what happens to humans, but all legal, financial, and assets we want to flow through here, and then the guardianship provision for any minor children would be in here. But even if you don't have minor children like me, you can't be like, oh, I don't want the will, I'll just take this. Nope, gotta have them both. Okay. Then the 3, what I call companion documents. Come here, buddy. It's your time to shine. Oh. If anyone has any mean senior chichi beans, any pets whatsoever, if anything happened to tomorrow, Where would the pets go? And then I'd like to know who your vet is so we can make a call, find out they're 12, have UTIs, on a special diet, whatever it is, and then an amount of money for their care if you wanted to leave anything for that person that would then be caring for the animal. The second document, really simple document, but super powerful, how I tie us together as LGBTQ folks. And that is the disposition of remains, agent for disposition of remains. So funeral directors are licensed professionals that can only speak to your legal next of kin. You are, if you're married, one another's legal next of kin. If you are somewhere where that is not recognized or it is challenged, you are not one another's legal next of kin. So I had a client call me several months ago, tell me this story. They went to the Turks and Caicos with two other lesbian couples on vacation for a scuba diving trip. One of the women had a scuba diving accident and ultimately succumbed to her injuries. And for the 2 days that she was in the hospital, her partner of 23 years, wife of 10, was unable to gain access to her. And then when she passed away, nobody would talk to her about the legal documentation to medically transport the body back to Maryland. Homophobic sister in Wyoming flew in, right? And then even though the woman lived in Maryland, she was the agent for disposition of remains, was able to direct that the body be flown to Wyoming. So then the wife had to follow to Wyoming. When the body arrived on US soil, her status as wife kicked back in. And then she was able, but 13 days went by. The woman was a vet, wanted to be interred, open casket, wrapped in a flag, in a Arlington National Cemetery, and this whole ceremony had to be cremated, wasn't able to get to do that in particular. She was still interred in Arlington, but not in the exact ceremony that she wanted. All right, so there is a statute in all 50 states, I'm sorry, 49 states, not Tennessee, but there is a statute in 49 states where you can appoint whomever you want per the statute. So if you are married, you are one another's legal next of kin. If you are somewhere where you are not, then the statutory appointment kicks in and you got that next level up. Okay, so super, super powerful and important. And then the final document, I would say 95% of people don't put anything on that document. It is not signed by me, witnessed, or notarized. It's around tangibles, tangible personal property. That dog Buddha behind me has been in my family for generations. Not really, it's from IKEA. But are there items that you would want to go to someone in particular? Doesn't have to be valuable, expensive, or an heirloom. I had a guy who put a paint by number he did when he was in first grade. And his husband jokes, the only good thing about you being dead is that paint by number would be off my mantle. Okay. So just any tangible item we would put on there. All right. So let me share my screen again. I know I went through that really fast. We have the healthcare power of attorney with HIPAA. We have the advance directive / living will. Hospital visitation authorization form 1 and 2. 1 is for one another. 2 is your global for your chosen family and all the things. Your DPOA, durable power of attorney. I forgot to mention, I give you 3 originals of those. It's a type of document that when you use it, you lose it kind of thing. So I give you multiple originals. And then the last will and testament and the revocable trust, no longer optional because everyone needs the marriage protection tool. Even if you don't need probate because you may not have a lot of water, i.e. assets, everybody needs the marriage recreation piece. Your pet care directive, the disposition of remains, and your TPP. All right. So Kim Davis. So as we know, back in 2015, she was a court clerk and she was put in jail for refusing to issue marriage licenses after Obergefell was declared the law of the land. She has been litigating it for the last 10 years, filed a formal petition for cert, and she claims Obergefell was erroneously. So this is a timeline. A lot of people are asking me how she has standing. So she has standing because for the last 10 years, her legal fees have been paid by the Alliance for Freedom Defense, like the just horrible nonprofit. And so it's gone all the way up. August 11th was when she officially filed the formal petition for cert. And just a few days ago is when we heard that the Supreme Court will meet in private to consider taking it. Why I view her case being weak right now. Typically SCOTUS wants to take cases where the circuits are divided. Imagine the 11 circuits as being little children and they're fighting one another, or they're just fighting. And one group thinks one thing, another group thinks another. So if the circuits are split on something, then the umpire, the referee is SCOTUS. And there's zero circuit split. She has lost procedural posture. Her case is really about damages, and this is important, and religious liberty claims. It is not, she does not have standing as a direct test to marriage equality. Okay, in my opinion. And then obviously less than 1% of petitions are granted. So there's no unique legal question. In my opinion, the petition is unlikely, but we'll talk about. So what could happen on November 7th? The Supreme Court could deny cert. Just deny it, leaving the damages. She owes $360,000. It was like 100,000 award, and then punitive damages, and then attorney's fees, and it all totals to 360,000 if I'm not mistaken. So that's ultimately what she's been appealing, is I don't owe that, because due to my religious beliefs, I didn't want to marry them and I shouldn't have had to. Okay, so they could just deny cert, leaving the damages intact, and it's done. She has nowhere else to go after that. Grant cert and use it as a vehicle to revisit Obergefell. Less likely with this case, no circuit split, all the things I said below. Grant cert. Take the case. Find out on November 7th the Supreme Court is in fact going to hear the Kim Davis case. But find a technical First Amendment argument to absolve Davis personally, so that she doesn't have to pay the $360,000 but not touch Obergefell. Likely. And we'll see, and we'll talk about what that looks like, erosion versus overturning. And then hold the case, wait for better cases to come. So in her petition that was filed in August, the language is very, very telling. Dobbs case is the case that overturned Roe v. Wade. And in the Dobbs case, all the legal documentation used the exact same language that Kim Davis used. So Kim Davis used that language as well as language from Amy Coney Barrett's book. So language matters in terms of speaking to the audience. Okay, so the exact same language, it mirrors the language that the Supreme Court found influential in overturning Roe v. Wade. A lot of people don't know that there are things happening across the country right now. A judge refused, she was just a county clerk. A judge refused to perform a same-sex marriage a few months ago, and nothing happened. She delegated it. She said, I'm not marrying these people, you do it. And so I feel like we didn't hear anything about it because that couple got married that day, just not by this woman. And so there's, a universe where the Supreme Court says, and we'll talk about the next case, where, she's right. She didn't have to be the clerk to do that. That's what Tennessee is saying. So we have red flags across red states, states that are creating legislation that will say clerks and judges, so this already exists, clerks and judges can refuse to solemnize marriages. That's what she did. Clerks and judges. So this has already been happening. The real litigation that we are going to see moving forward will be around the First Amendment and religious freedoms. Very few people are talking about this. The Supreme Court already took its first swipe at marriage equality. June of last year, a massive, massive swipe at marriage equality. A random immigration case about a straight couple. Okay, so here's that straight couple, and Sandra Munez's husband was deported. First time in U.S. history that a married couple had their spouse taken away from them and deported. The Constitution, up until then, protected all married people, right? The 1970 movie Green Card with Gerald Depardieu, that if you get married, That's it. You're safe. Nobody can take away your husband. Not anymore. All right. So in this case, State Department v. Muniz held that U.S. citizens have no fundamental liberty interest in having a non-citizen spouse admitted to the U.S. He had 2 children that were born here. They were married for a significant amount of time, birthed 2 kids born on this soil. They still took him and deported him to El Salvador. First time ever. They now live there. What Amy Coney Barrett said in her opinion, which made no sense, absolutely nonsensical, but she did say everyone has the fundamental right to marriage. Everyone. That's Obergefell. And she said the Constitution protects the right to marry, but not have your spouse live with you. In other words, you can marry, but you may not be able to live together. This was the beginning. So, again, to go back to this, right? The 1,138 state and federal rights. Now it's 1,137. The Muniz case will be the case that dismantles Obergefell. It will be cited time and time again. And they should not have taken this case. The dissent in this case was livid. So typically, again, the Supreme Court of the United States can only take a case that there is actually something to decide. So Sandra here, Muniz, said, you know what? You never told me why you deported my husband. I have no due process. You never told me why. And then about 6 months before this case was heard, they told her why. Suspicious tattoos, potential gang affiliation, deported. So before the Supreme Court decided to take the case, she found out why. There was no longer a reason to take the case. They took it anyways because they need precedent. They need something to cite. The Supreme Court can't overturn something or eviscerate something without precedent. This will be the case, the precedent, that they will cite time and time again. And now, will Obergefell be dismantled little by little, or will there be a massive overturning of Obergefell? I think there'll be a death by 1,000 cuts, a dismantling over time. Okay, so you have again, Obergefell framed marriage as a bundle of the 1,138, and this was the beginning of the dismantling of that. You have the right to marry, but not necessarily cohabitate. Next thing you know is you have the right to marry LGBTQ folks, but not adopt. Oh, you have the right to marry LGBTQ folks, but not tell Kim Davis that she has to marry you. Right? Even Gorsuch disagreed with the dissent. He didn't dissent per se, but he wrote a concurring opinion saying, I agree with your overall decision to deport him, but we never should have taken this case. You overstretched. You made this about marriage equality. We stretched. We took a case that we never should have taken in order to make it about marriage equality so that we would have precedent. And then the rest of the dissent. So Obergefell rejected what the majority did here today as inconsistent with the approach this court has used in discussing the fundamental rights of marriage and intimacy. Same-sex couples will be forced to relocate to countries that do not recognize same-sex marriage, or even those that criminalize homosexuality. The burden will fall most heavily on same-sex couples who lack the ability to make a home in the non-citizen spouse's country. Okay? The Respect for Marriage Act. I'm asked a lot about the Respect for Marriage Act. And what about how this all plays in? Okay, so there are massive weaknesses with the Respect for Marriage Act. It was decided 2-3 days after Roe v. Wade fell. Over 91 senators voted for it out of 100. 91. They don't love us. The only reason they said yes was they agreed to massive religious exemptions. Religious exemptions you could drive a car through. And interestingly enough, the Respect for Marriage Act can't be challenged until Obergefell gets overturned. It's one of the first times in U.S. history that we actually enacted a law preemptively, because Obergefell is law of the land. But it saw the writing on the wall with Clarence Thomas's opinion, and so They enacted the Respect for Marriage Act. But how can Trump dismantle the Respect for Marriage Act, weaponize the massive religious exemptions that exist, narrow federal enforcement, refuse regulatory sabotage within the agencies? It's kind of complicated to explain, but every agency is able to define marriage how they want: place of celebration, place of residency. And if they use place of residency, then all the states that won't allow marriage equality, those people won't have the federal benefits. And then the executive order that he issued on the inauguration day, declaring only two sexes in this country, male and female. Right? So obviously the first people, mainly predominantly immediately impacted, were gender diverse, non-binary trans folks. But I saw the writing on the wall for marriage equality. Wouldn't it stand to reason that if the federal government only recognized male and female, that all federal benefits that flow to a married couple must be made up of a male and female? So we won't know how the Respect for Marriage Act will be eviscerated until we start having issues with Obergefell. So people, we just won't know how they are going to eviscerate it until they do. So again, I view an erosion of marriage equality due to Munez that will ultimately retroactively vindicate Kim Davis. So again, the Supreme Court on November 7th could do one of, two things, or three things: take the case and narrowly limit their holding that she had the First Amendment right to do what she did and she shouldn't pay that money. That will create a precedent for all of the religious exemptions around marriage moving forward. That is the beginning, again, slippery slope. They could deny it outright because they know they have Munez. They already have Munez in their pocket. Nobody's talking about Munez. Everybody's looking at Kim Davis. It sounds super deceptive, and it is. But they could absolutely just deny the Kim Davis case because it's a horrible case, and then use Munez over time to eviscerate Obergefell. Or it could take the Kim Davis case and overturn Obergefell, but man, it's a really bad case for that, and how they do legal gymnastics around it to make that happen will be difficult. My favorite movie. So the law moves at a glacial pace, but you don't have to. What can you do? Fortify your family now. Estate planning, estate planning, estate planning. Strengthen the community. Stay loud, stay visible. Do your part. Be an ally to someone. Engage politically, educate, and share. And this is what I kind of talked about earlier in terms of what are we looking at? Hillary, everybody's asking me, should we get married? She said this about a month ago, August 11th, when Kim Davis filed the petition, and she was on news cycles yesterday being interviewed again, saying the exact same thing. Get married. I say do so safely with a prenup. If you were even talking about it, don't rush out and it's not by November 7th in any way, shape, or form. Nothing is happening on November 7th. Okay? The only thing happening on November 7th is the Supreme Court will decide whether or not to take the case. And we'll find out how that will work itself out. All right. All right, Jen, where should we start?
So there's a lot of questions around for if purchasing the documents, do you have relationships in different states? Specifically California, Texas, New York, Colorado, Ohio. Also, do you see clients in Michigan?
Yes, all of those so far. Yep. And let me just take a look. Pennsylvania. Yeah, I'm in Philly. Of course, Pennsylvania. All
right. Do you want me to read some of the questions?
Yeah.
The Respect for Marriage Act says red states will have to respect marriages done in other states. I'm curious if you know, are there any laws that say something similar for other countries? Like if we decide to get married in Cozumel on a cruise, would it be respected? Or would we need to go to a blue state and basically get married again?
Yeah, no, same. So the Respect for Marriage Act is not in effect. That's the whole point. So the Respect for Marriage Act was enacted. If Obergefell gets overturned and it goes back to the states, Then the Respect for Marriage Act was created in order to do what you just said. But then there are the religious exemptions, right? So we have never litigated the religious exemptions around marriage equality. So if Obergefell gets overturned and or eviscerated, and you were married in Pennsylvania, which has marriage equality, but you live in Tennessee, the idea being is that you can go back to Tennessee, and Tennessee has to respect that marriage due to full faith and credit and all the things. But Tennessee is going to say, no, our religious exemptions. We don't want to, per RFRA, Religious Freedom Restoration Act. We haven't litigated that yet. Okay. But so it'll really depend where you live and litigation around religious freedoms moving forward. The Supreme Court on November 7th could make that Kim Davis case the religious exemption case, leaving Obergefell intact. But again, giving us precedent. It's all about building precedent. The Project 2025 folks, Heritage Foundation, was on a 50-year plan to overturn Roe v. Wade. It happened on the 50th year. They did it. They are slow and steady and meticulous. And so it's happening, but I don't view this massive overturning. But anyway, so if that's what I was talking about, place of residency, place of celebration. Currently, right now, the whole federal government recognizes place of celebration. If you celebrated your marriage somewhere where it was legal, then it's legal where you are, regardless of where you reside. As long as it was legal in Canada, which it is, Mexico, which it is, then you come back to Tennessee, it's legal. That's where we're at with Obergefell being in effect. Okay, so, and you want to be careful about getting married multiple times. It's a sticky situation. I'm one of the only lawyers who has to deal with this question because a lot of folks in our community, trans folks who marriage certificates can't all be amended. Some states do, most do not. You cannot amend your marriage certificate. So two women got married, women assigned at birth, and then someone transitions, and now John versus Joanne, but the marriage certificate still says Joanne. A lot of these privileges are time-based. Social Security survivor benefits, being married 10 years. If you have 8 years on the clock, I don't want you getting married again. And you have to lie at the end of the day. Because when you file for that marriage certificate, you may not remember, but it said, have you ever been previously married? And you'll have to say yes, but then you won't be able to provide a divorce decree. And they're going to be like, what are you doing? Or you lie and say no and then get married again, and then we don't know. I mean, a lot of folks have done that, but we don't know what that means, what that will happen. Okay, so all right.
So
Uh,
the next one, someone I got stuck completing the Pride Plans package because I'm the only child of deceased parents. My wife has a MAGA brother and mom with dementia. We're looking at leaving the country. We don't know who or what to put besides each other.
so yeah, I have a lot of sort of either orphans by choice or orphans due to life circumstance. In the last like 2 weeks have been a lot of the planning has been around, and one only child of two only children, smallest nuclear family I've ever seen. Chosen family. Tina, I don't know what your social circle looks like as far as chosen family. I don't have family playing any of the roles in my documents. They're all chosen family. So, not everybody, even if they have a massive nuclear family or immediate family, not everyone, a lot of my clients tend to be the most trusted person in their family, that they are the one that the whole family looks to. So when it comes to them to have to find someone, you typically end up going outside of that. So, um, one of two things. I don't know if you're talking specifically about roles, right? Like you're one another's primaries. You are one another's durable. You're one another's healthcare. You're one another's executor, trustee, all the things. And then if you can't find the alternate, that's okay. You're one another's primary. And then if anything happens to your wife, you know that you need to update your documents seriously and then consider it. But don't stay stuck. Email Tom at Pride Plans and let him know you're stuck. Let him know we spoke. He'll hop on a call with you, 15 minutes or so, and help you get unstuck. But I'd rather you sign these documents with just one another. And then, as far as if it's around asset distribution, if you're both gone, you don't know where to leave it, charity. A lot of my clients, if they don't have anyone either politically or within their family and or chosen family, nibblings, anything, then there's also charity, right? So I think you're talking about the roles themselves, who would play your durable executor, all the things, in which case, if there's, and you have to trust this person implicitly, these are significant powers. I don't want you just putting a random friend. So you either trust this person implicitly or you just leave you and your wife. And if anything happens to either one of you, the other person is updating immediately. And if something happens to the two of you together, you have nothing to worry about. Okay. All right. Yep. Jody, same. So if you move overseas, yes, a lot of people are leaving. My last legal Q&A was all about how to do just that inexpensively, creatively, and all of the things. If you want to look at that, catch that legal Q&A, then go to my YouTube channel. It's there. But we discussed a lot of ways outside of $500,000, golden visa parachutes that there are in order to leave the country. So these documents will govern until you choose to be a permanent resident in that country. The minute you switch over from being a US citizen who happens to be an expat in another country, there's a lot of those around the world, to having chosen your country, then we redo your estate planning. Your US, if you happen to have assets still here, we'll handle those here. If not, then you can just have Portugal documents. But no matter what, a lot of folks have 401ks here. Maybe they're keeping the house here. So you may have US-based documents or US-based assets of foothold here, and your US-based estate planning documents will govern those. My partner and I are engaged in planning our wedding for next fall, but looking to get legally married. What should we do? Michigan, doesn't matter where you are. Next fall. So if they take this case, whether it's to overturn Obergefell completely or whether it's a narrow ruling around the religious freedom piece, and if they deny it, they deny it. But there are other cases working up, like the Tennessee bill and all of the things that are more direct to marriage equality. I always say if folks are going to get married earlier than they anticipated or at all, do so safely with a prenup. I view it as the 10th estate planning document. Everybody on this call here has a prenup. It's whether or not you put it in writing or the state of Michigan put it in writing. But if you get divorced, we're reading something. And it was meant for everyone in Michigan, therefore not meant for you too. So if you've never played a game before, you're coming over to my house this Friday night. We're going to play game night. All right, it's game night. We're going to play a brand new game that we've never played. It's hot off the press. No one's ever played it. It's still shrink wrapped. What's the first thing we're going to do when we open the box? Read the rules. Read the instructions. So this is your, even if you've been married previously, which if you have, then you probably know you should have a prenup. But if you've never played the game of marriage before, why wouldn't you want to write the rule book? Your own rule book. It's a very empowering process. Okay, so everybody has one. It's whether or not you put it in writing or the state in which you live in put it in writing. So domestic partners absolutely need these documents. Okay, it's not just for married folks. Again, remember I said at the outset, I view all married LGBTQ folks as inherently unmarried. Because predominantly, statistically, everybody in this country, in my opinion, is deemed unmarried globally. 37 countries out of 195, soon to be 36, respect and acknowledge your marriage. So I've been doing these documents the way that I was doing them pre-marriage equality. So my unmarried folks absolutely need them because you're not considered married anywhere. 0 out of 195. The married folks get 37. Not that much off, right? So unmarried, absolutely. And then married, absolutely. So it's not a married, unmarried thing. We're just talking about married folks because of marriage equality. Marriage is the 1,138 state and federal privileges. Actually met with a straight couple this morning. I mean, not that that's so shocking, but I have 97% of my clients are gay and fabulous, and I joke the other 3% are fabulous. So I met this fabulous straight couple this morning, and they don't want to get legally married, and they came to me because how can we recreate the privileges, claw back the powers, all of the things. So absolutely need them as DPs. But you don't need to be married. Yeah, 100%. Everyone needs them. Everyone needs them. Um, Wisconsin, Sharon, I am working on. I mean, I've been working on Wisconsin for a long time. I made a post yesterday to try to bring up. So I'm working on Wisconsin. I have 2 Wisconsin clients that are just waiting for me to formalize a co-counsel relationship in Wisconsin. I have November dedicated to growing that co-counsel. My goal is by the end of um, 12/31 to be in all 50 states. And Wisconsin is one of the ones I'm working on. First thing, November 5th through the rest of the month, I have blocked off. Washington, yep. Pennsylvania, yep. West Virginia, nope. Working on that one. I believe your name looks familiar. You may have emailed me from one of the other ones. Let me just make a note on that one. That one fell off my radar as a priority. But because of my post yesterday, I got Nebraska, Montana, Louisiana, and Minnesota, which I didn't have earlier. So 4 more based on yesterday. Ted, um, such as Muniz. Yes, exactly. Thank you. If the Kim Davis case isn't heard, does it mean SCOTUS will look to other avenues like the Muniz case? Yes. That is like, I don't want, on November 7th, I envision they could deny the petition and make a public statement that Obergefell is the law of the land, that Obergefell is settled law, and that they won't touch it. And there'll be a false sense of security coming over folks because Muniz is there and nobody is talking about Muniz. So if they deny cert, I envision them denying it publicly and making this big. Amy Coney Barrett said in an interview a couple days ago, Obergefell is settled law. Gorsuch, or maybe it was Alito. Alito said something in an interview about a week ago. Obergefell is settled law. We're not coming for it. So there easily could be a denial and then a big public statement saying Obergefell is law of the land. Supreme Court states they won't touch it. Meanwhile, little by little by little, they're chipping away at the 1,138, and no one even has heard of the Muniz case. If you Google it, there's one article in like all of the internet. Okay, so super, super crazy. Again, any question around should you get married sooner, you are the highest authority on you. You know you. I would hate for folks to do this out of fear, right? But again, if you are going to do so safely with the prenup. You are hedging your bets. Nothing's happening on November 7th. Even if they take the case, then oral arguments, then the opinion likely will come down in June of next year. So then whether or not you do so sooner rather than later is up to you. What do you think the trigger will be for the Secretary of Defense and the VA Secretary to stop recognizing? So that's interesting. So a lot of people don't know this, but again, it goes back to that regulatory enforcement piece that I mentioned earlier, the place of residency, place of celebration. Federal government agencies can decide for themselves. Obama, well, let me back up. So the Secretary of Defense and active military had place of celebration, pre-marriage equality. Okay, so folks, before Obergefell, this was before Obergefell, we didn't even know this was an issue. But when Windsor got decided, we had a year before Obergefell. During that year, folks that were active military, place of celebration, they go to Mexico, they get married, celebrated it in Mexico, but they lived in West Virginia. Active military recognized their marriage, and they got all of the active military benefits and duties. Then that woman retires and becomes a vet, right? Veteran, a retired veteran. The VA was place of residency. So then that same woman lives in West Virginia, wakes up on her first day of retirement, her spouse has no spousal benefits. It was the first time that we realized the hodgepodge of the federal government and that each one, Department of Education and this and that, all had their own. So Obama came and said, everybody place of celebration. So that LGBTQ folks everywhere, as long as they got married somewhere, we had 1 year of this, before Obergefell made it law of the land. So what Trump can do is just revert it back to place of residence. And that will have a huge, huge impact on federal benefits. Yeah, federal benefits, all, again, we have to yep. Jody and I talked a lot about that. We just have to see. And yeah, I mean, the folks, in 2014, in that 1 year between Windsor in 2013 and then Obergefell in 2015, 2014 showed us that, and everybody just lost their benefits. If I create a revocable trust and a few of the other documents with another attorney, would like it review maintained by you on an annual basis from Texas? No, I mean, that person would just, I mean, I guess I would review them, but because we can work with folks in Texas, but the goal ultimately, like I have a definition of spouse that I've created post-election that goes in there. The different queer competent ways in which I've modified my documents and or changed them. You get them signed, you get them drafted and then signed, and then to have to change them to make them queer competent. But I am working with the American Bar Association to put together a webinar, hopefully in a few months, in order to teach more lawyers on how to be competent in LGBTQ law generally. My children are adopted. Is there anything we should be worried about? If you have adoption decrees, that cannot be overturned. That is a court order. You are good to go. Lancaster, my partner's from there. Thank you for the info. Are these forms only available? I mean, I created them. So I'm the founder of the 9 documents, but I created pride plans, digitized them. They're there. I share them widely with all my co-counsels. The idea is that folks in all 50 states have access to competent lawyers that are competent in LGBTQ law. So it's not that they're only available through me, it's that I created them and ultimately, little by little, trying to educate lawyers around the country on what to do with them. Respect for Marriage Act, I dealt with that. Yes, it's being recorded. My heart just did a little thing. But yes, I just confirmed it's being recorded, although we now need to look back at the limit of folks that are allowed in. What verbiage does your planning docs use now to refer us? The definition of spouse, Jenny, that I mentioned. So I came up with a definition post-election that addresses that. And so if you are considered domestic partners 3 years from now, I've addressed why we've used the word spouse, and you don't have to go back and update your documents to remove spouse and put in domestic partner. At the end of the day, domestic partner is a designation. It's merely a qualifier. What if I said the human Jen? The a-hole Jen? My spouse, Jen? At the end of the day, it's just a qualifier meant to further qualify and identify Jen, right? No legal significance. So I've added a provision in there with that in mind. Trust documents. Will this be no, trust documents predate. So that's why everybody is getting the revocable trust. My wife and I just got trust documents. It states spouse. Oh, this is a spouse. No. Well, it doesn't have the spousal definition in it, but to me, that won't render it null and void. But depending on who's looking at the document without that definition, it's a little more up in the air. But legally, I don't believe that the qualifier or the designator of the word spouse should have legal significance. Why do we need prenups if we don't have large sums of money? You may in the future. A, you may have large sums of money in the future. B, divorce, truly, a lot of times, the most contested divorces, people have no money, right? Divorce is simply how to dissolve your legal relationship. Whether you're fighting over $1 million or $100, people fight, the emotions around it. This is you stating who moves out, who stays. Even if you're renting. If you're renting right now, you don't own a home, you're married, you get divorced, who's leaving? Can't change locks, right? Prenups, I have a 17-point checklist on my prenups. Most people have 3. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, what's joint is joint. Awesome. Whoop-de-doo. Okay? There's so many more things to plan around when you're legally married that, so very rarely, in my opinion, does it have to do with money. The money allows you strategically maybe to beat out the other person, but it's not necessarily the biggest issues are pets. My God, I have one, we can't get through the prenup. We may not finish our prenup because of the pets. Deciding in advance where the pets would go. Illinois, yes. I need to do that. Is there a state by state? But we're working on that now. Again, by the end of the year, hopefully. And question about the urgency. Delia, I think I did, but let me know. AZ, yes, I'm licensed in AZ. I lived there for a bit. Yes, Jody, I'll make a TikTok about Munez before the 7th. And it's a lot to simplify. It's going to be a longer than a 90-second, but if people want to listen to it, they will. Absolutely. Those of us in red states are likely screwed. We'll see how things unroll. I'll be here. I'll just keep you posted. Do we get a copy of this recording? So anyone who registered, so if you're on this, you registered, will get a link via email. But also for everyone else who wasn't able to get in out of the 99 when we were capped at 99, in the next few days, usually it takes about 2 to 3 days. We're working on shortening that time period, but we will upload an edited version of this recording to YouTube, to my YouTube channel, which is at Your Gay Lawyer. And at Your Gay Lawyer is where you can find all the other legal Q&As around shadow docket, around trans folks being FBI wanting to classify them as NTEs, nihilistic terrorist extremists, and all of the things. So we've covered a lot, including how to move out of this country. State by state, yes, they should be filled out for the state in which you live. And it's called estate planning, ING, because plans are meant to change. So if you do move, then you do have to update minimally the will and the trust. Okay, so view estate planning as something that you do moving forward. But for the state in which you live, and then should you move. And yes, subscribe to YouTube. Everything that we do will be there. Jen just put it in the chat. What's the website? To prideplans.com is where you can get them at a fraction of the cost of working with a private attorney directly. So a queer legal Zoom, if you will. That's prideplans.com. I don't have any content. I have my 17-point checklist that I'm willing to share with folks. It's not legal advice, it's legal information. They're just 17 things that folks should think about. So, not licensed in North Carolina, but I do have co-counsel in North Carolina, and it's one of my Caravan of Hope stops that I do every year. So yes, we work with folks directly in North Carolina. The HVA, the card. So a lot of folks already have their documents, and this is the only one that they don't have. So it took a while, but Jen just put that in the chat as well. These are now available for purchase. It's like $45, I think, for the couple or something like that. And we give you the exact dimensions to take this to Staples, to get it shrunken down, laminated, to tell them exactly what to do in order for you to have the cards. But again, also upload it to the cloud, all of your documents. You're very welcome, Jen and Joe. Massachusetts, yes. We have co-counsel in Massachusetts, but not Vermont, and Vermont is on my list. Where'd my list go? What did I say earlier? I said West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Vermont is definitely on my list. Yes, we have co-counsel in Georgia. I went to college in Georgia. And this woman I went to college with, who's now an attorney, she's lovely. She's my co-counsel in Georgia. So, yep. The next Caravan of Hope tour. I'm just so busy right now. I'm waiting for things to just sort of calm down. It was supposed to be November, There is no way with what's going on right now that I'll be able to do November. But the woman who donated this 32-foot RV for me, also named Angela, a client of mine, she normally winterizes it. So, and in the middle of winter would be pretty horrific, anyways, for my team. So I'm thinking April. So in May is her big season when she rents it out to folks. So I'm in talks with her to figure out the next best month in order to do it. So hopefully April, but it was supposed to be November. I'd be leaving right now, which is just absolutely unrealistic with what's going on. And good, Alice. Yes. We all need to do our part, right? These are scary times. And so I'm glad that this is at least a little helpful and motivating for folks. We're going to get through this together in community, right? And especially with estate planning, everybody needs estate planning documents, right? So while a furrowed brow negative reason may bring you to the process, eyebrows up, you need it anyways. So just view the eyebrows up reason, right? Terry Schiavo, straight married couple, eyebrows up. Everybody needs it. So just do it. And then whatever happens with Obergefell, which we'll keep you posted, you can be mad, you can be angry, you can donate, you can march, you can vote, but you don't have to be afraid. Right? V from Under the Desk News, I said, and I use it now. They said, don't be scared, just be prepared when we work together on this. Right? Don't be scared, just be prepared. Do what you can do. This you can do. This you can proactively take care of. Obergefell and Kim Davis and all the craziness out there, you can't control. So, all right. So again, 2 weeks from now, we'll do the next legal Q&A. Anyone on the email list, we will send out when we know what that topic will be, what it'll be. And then other than that, I will, like I said, do more content around Munez leading up to November 7th. And any questions, email us. Also, if you have questions that we didn't address or a topic that you'd like to see covered that we haven't covered, or even if we've covered it, but you'd like it covered from a different angle, just reply to the email that you get notifying you of this. It comes to myself and Jen, and we'll absolutely, make sure that we cover those things. So, all right. Happy Tuesday. They're better than Tuesdays. Right? Taco Tuesday is really what it's about. So have a taco today. All right. High five, guys.